He was a king whose roar shook the sun. But his greatest enemy was a silence he created himself. This is why the lion should have listened to the moon. The sun did not merely shine upon Jabari, it anointed him. Each dawn, as the first searing blade of light cut across the Uzuri Plains, it found his form first, setting his magnificent mane ablaze in a halo of gold and fire. He was the dawn's herald, his roar a deep, tectonic sound that rolled across the grasslands, shaking the dew from the acacia leaves and vibrating in the very bones of every creature that heard it. To the herds of skittish gazelle and towering elephants, it was the law. To his pride, a sound of unwavering security. Jabari, king of the Uzuri, knew his strength was the axis upon which the world turned. He believed the sun's fierce, honest light was the only counsel he would ever need, for it revealed everything a king needed to see. But the world has two eyes, and Jabari had chosen to close one. In the deep, cool shadows of the granite koppies, where the elders gathered to escape the midday fury of their solar patron, the old tales were still told. They were whispered by lionesses like Zawadi, whose fur was the color of bleached bone, and whose eyes held the milky sheen of countless seasons. She spoke of the covenant of balance, a sacred pact woven into the fabric of the land at the beginning of time. The sun, they said, gave the king his strength, his courage, his power to rule the visible world. But the moon, the great silver orb known as Mwezi, was the queen of the unseen. She held the secrets of the future in her soft, reflected light. She heard the dreams of the seeds sleeping in the earth, and understood the language of the winds that spoke of things yet to come. The covenant is simple, Jabari, Zawadi's voice rasped one evening, as the sun bled into the horizon. When Mwezi is at her fullest, you must climb the listening rock. You must quiet the roar in your heart, and still the pride in your soul. You must listen. She will guide you. She will tell you where the rains are being born, where the herds will journey, and what silent dangers stir in the forgotten corners of the world. To ignore her is to rule a kingdom blindfolded. Jabari, feeling the sun's lingering warmth on his back like a cloak of approval, snorted. The sound was a dismissal. You speak of shadows and whispers, Zawadi. I rule in the light, with a roar that shakes the sky. What use do I have for the timid counsel of a rock in the night? My claws are my foresight. My will is the only command this land requires. The younger members of the pride, lions and lionesses, who had known only Jabari's golden age, rumbled in agreement. They saw his defiance as strength, his pride as power. They did not see the delicate, invisible threads of balance he was severing with every boast. The night of the next full moon arrived, transforming the plains into a landscape of liquid silver and deep, velvety shadows. Mwezi rose, immense and serene, her light so bright it cast sharp, black silhouettes of the acacia trees. Tradition demanded the pilgrimage. With a theatrical sigh that spoke of his immense burden, Jabari ascended the smooth, worn granite of the listening rock. His entire pride watched from below, a silent, expectant congregation. He reached the summit, a stage under the celestial spotlight. But he did not bow his head. He did not close his eyes. He stood to his full, impressive height, his proud head tilted back, his majestic manner a dark cloud against Mwezi's brilliant face. He waited for a voice. A clear, commanding pronouncement worthy of a king. The wind shifted. Mwezi's breath swept up from the eastern deserts, a cool, insistent breeze. It did not carry words. It carried a message nonetheless, a dry, gritty dust on the air, the faint, desperate scent of parched earth and withering plants, a clear and urgent warning of a profound drought brewing in the lands beyond the Baobab Ridge. It was a plea for preparation, for caution. Jabari, whose world was built on the immediate and the tangible, smelled only the familiar, comforting aroma of the Uzuri grasses. He felt the wind, but he did not feel its meaning. He listened for a roar, and heard only a sigh. His patience, thin as a spider's web, snapped. Enough! His roar erupted, a violent, physical force that shattered the night's sacred silence. Birds nesting in a distant tree exploded into the air in a panic of wings. The very air seemed to flinch. This is the voice of a king. This is power. Your silence is an admission of weakness. I have listened to nothing, and I will waste my nights no longer. Let the sun be my only guide. He descended from the rock, his pride intact, the ancient covenant lying shattered at his feet. He did not see the single, glistening tear trace a path through the dusty fur on Zawadi's aged face. He did not feel the deep, mournful tremor that passed through the heart of the land itself. He had silenced the one voice that could have saved them all. The unraveling began subtly, as all great tragedies do. The world did not end with a cataclysm, it began to forget how to be a world. The rains, when they came, were hesitant and sparse, as if they had forgotten the route to the plains. The lush, emerald carpet of grass lost its memory of green, fading to a pale, sickly yellow. The water in the great watering hole, once crystal clear and sweet, began to taste of dull metal and dust, as if it had forgotten its own purity. Then came the day the curse claimed its first soul. Faraji, a young, virile hunter known for his speed and courage, was found not on the hunt, but wandering in a confused circle near the den. His mate, Nola, called his name, her voice sharp with alarm. Faraji turned his head, but his eyes were empty, hollow pools of confusion. There was no spark of recognition, no love, no memory. He looked at her as if she were a stranger. He had forgotten her face. He had forgotten the sound of his own name. He opened his mouth, but no roar came out, only a confused, pathetic whimper. He had forgotten how to be a lion. The great forgetting had begun, and its first victim was one of their strongest. Pandemonium, cold and sharp, pierced the heart of the pride. This was no sickness of the body. This was a theft of the soul, a terror far worse than any rival clan, or raging fire. A council was called, not in the sun, but in the deepening shadows of dread. Jabari, his royal composure cracked, paced before his terrified pride. What sorcery is this, he thundered, but his roar now sounded hollow, a performance without power. What enemy has done this? Show yourself. It was Zawadi who stepped forward, her body frail, but her spirit unbroken. She did not address the king with anger, but with a sorrow so profound it silenced the anxious murmurs around them. The enemy is not out there, Jabari, she said, her raspy voice carrying a terrifying clarity. The enemy is the consequence of your pride. You stand before us, but you are not here. You have been blind and deaf to the truth since the day you turned your back on the balance. You demanded the moon shout her secrets in a voice like your own, and when she spoke in her true language, the language of the wind, the scent on the air, the dream in the night, you called it silence. You did not listen. And because the king does not listen, the land is forgetting itself. The water forgets how to be clean. The grass forgets how to grow. And our minds, her voice broke, our minds are forgetting how to remember. You have not been cursed by an enemy, Jabari. You have cursed us all with your arrogance. The truth landed upon Jabari not like a blow, but like a mountain collapsing onto his soul. The air left his lungs. The fire in his golden eyes guttered and died, replaced by the chilling horror of understanding. The great forgetting was not an attack. It was a symptom. It was the final, desperate cry of a world whose balance had been destroyed. His strength, his roar, his sun-blessed power, it was all a glorious, devastating lie. He was the author of their doom. The king who had spent a lifetime learning to speak now faced an impossible task, to learn how to listen to a silence he had created, or to stand as a helpless witness as his pride, his home, and his very legacy faded into a hollow, silent nothingness. The weight of his crown had never felt so heavy, or so utterly, completely worthless. The silence that fell over the Uzuri Plains was more terrifying than any roar. It was the silence of fading memories, of lost connections, of a world slowly unraveling. Jabari stood frozen, Zawadi's words echoing in his mind like a death sentence. He was the cause. The knowledge was a poison more potent than any snake's venom, paralyzing his heart and clouding his vision. Around him, his pride looked on, their eyes, once filled with unwavering devotion, now reflected a chilling cocktail of fear, confusion, and a dawning sense of betrayal. The mighty king was a fraud, and his kingdom was dying because of it. For 3 sunrises and 3 moons, Jabari remained motionless on the outskirts of the den, a statue of despair. He watched as another young lioness, Amani, forgot the hunting call her mother had taught her. He saw the confusion in the eyes of the elders as they struggled to recall the paths to the secret, still clean springs in the hills. The very air grew thin, as if the land itself was forgetting how to breathe. His own thoughts began to feel frayed, like a rope weathering in a storm. The terror of forgetting his own name, his own roar, finally shattered his stupor. He could not die as the king who destroyed everything. He had to try. He approached Zawadi, his head bowed lower than it had ever been. The proud manner that was his crown now felt like a burden. "Old mother," he murmured, his voice stripped of its thunder, a hollow, broken thing. "You speak of listening. But how can I listen to a silence I created? The moon is silent to me. The wind is just the wind. I do not know how to hear what is not spoken." Zawadi studied him, her milky eyes seeing not the king, but the desperate cub within. "You have spent your life speaking, Jabari. Your roar demanded that the world listen to you. You never considered that the world has been speaking all along. Mwezi does not shout. Her voice is in the spaces between sounds. To hear her, you must first learn to be silent. Truly silent. Not just your mouth, but your heart, your pride, your very soul." "Where do I begin?" Jabari asked, the question itself a form of surrender. "You must go to the one creature in these plains who has never been heard, because no one has ever bothered to listen," Zawadi instructed. "You must find the weaver." A ripple of disbelief went through the pride who were listening. The weaver was not a lion, nor a mighty beast. The weaver was a spider, a Nanzi, who dwelled in the deepest, darkest thicket at the edge of the plains, a place of tangled roots and perpetual shadow. He was considered a trickster, a teller of tall tales, a creature of no consequence to the great cats. To seek his counsel was the ultimate humiliation. But humiliation was a price Jabari now understood he must pay. With the fearful whispers of his pride at his back, he journeyed to the thicket. The air was cool and smelled of damp earth and decay. In the center of a web that glistened with 1,000 dewdrops, sat a Nanzi, his 8 eyes gleaming with an unnerving intelligence. The great King Jabari, Ananzi's voice was a dry rustle, like leaves skittering across stone. "Has the sun fallen from the sky, that you crawl into my shadow?" There was no mockery in the tone, only a deep, ancient curiosity. For the first time, Jabari did not respond with a roar or a boast. He remembered Zawadi's words. He lowered his massive body to the ground, laying his head on his paws, making himself small. He closed his eyes and fought to quiet the storm of fear and shame in his heart. He simply listened. He heard the hum of the thicket, the scuttling of a beetle, the drip of water, the gentle, rhythmic click-click-click of a Nanzi working. After a long silence, the spider spoke again. "You are trying. That is a start. You wish to hear the moon. You must first understand what a whisper is. A whisper is not a small shout. It is a different language altogether. Watch." Ananzi pointed a delicate leg at his web. "This web is not just a trap. It is an ear. Every strand is connected. When the wind blows from the east, it hums a different song than the wind from the west. When a leaf falls a mile away, the vibration travels to me here. I do not hear the leaf fall, I feel the story of its fall. Mwezi's voice is like that. It is not carried on the wind, it is the wind. It is not in the dream, it is the dream. You have been trying to hear words. You must learn to feel the meaning. Jabari opened his eyes, a flicker of understanding igniting within him. How, he asked, his voice a genuine whisper. You must go to the caves of echoes, Anansi said. In their depths, you will hear nothing but your own self. It is the first lesson. To hear others, you must first stop listening to the sound of your own voice. The journey to the caves was a solitary one. The entrance was a dark moor in the side of a granite mountain. Inside, the world was reduced to sound. The drip of water echoed for minutes. The soft pad of his own paws sounded like a stampede. When he tried to let out a small, frustrated grunt, the cave threw it back at him 100 times, a cacophony of his own frustration. He sat in the absolute darkness, as Zawadi and Anansi had instructed. He breathed. He let the echoes of his own grunt fade. He stopped fighting the silence and let it envelop him. Hours passed. Days. He grew hungry and thirsty, but he did not leave. He was waiting for the silence to stop being empty and start being full. And then, it happened. In the deep, profound quiet, he began to hear the subtle sounds he had always drowned out. The sound of his own heartbeat. The faint scrape of a crystal growing in the rock. And then, a vibration, so subtle it was almost not there. It was the memory of a sound, the ghost of a whisper from the stone itself. It was not Mwezi, not yet. It was the cave remembering the rain that had carved it, millennia ago. He was hearing the memory of the land. He had learned to listen. He emerged from the cave, gaunt and weary, but his eyes held a new light, a quiet intensity that had replaced the blazing fire of his pride. He did not roar his return. He walked back to the thicket and bowed his head to Anansi. I heard the stone remember, Jabari said. Anansi's many eyes seemed to smile. Good. Now you are ready for the second lesson. The wind does not just carry scents. It carries truths. The drought you were warned of, it is not coming. It is already here. A cold dread washed over Jabari. What? But the plains are still green. The green is a memory, Anansi corrected him. The grass is living on the last of the deep earth's water. The truth is blowing in from the east. You must learn to taste the wind. Guided by this new understanding, Jabari climbed a high ridge and faced the east. He closed his eyes, opened his mouth, and tasted the air, not for prey, but for truth. He filtered past the familiar sense of his home. And there it was, the same dry, gritty dust he had smelled on the listening rock, but now it was stronger, undeniable. Beneath the dust was a deeper, more terrifying taste, the taste of nothing. An absence of water, of life, of future. It was the taste of the end. The plot twist struck him with the force of a physical blow. The great forgetting was not the only crisis. It was merely the first symptom. The real, physical annihilation was marching toward them, silent and inexorable. They were trapped between a curse that stole their minds and a drought that would claim their bodies. He raced back to the pride, his heart pounding not with pride, but with a desperate urgency. He found Zawadi. The spider spoke the truth, he gasped. The forgetting is only the beginning. A drought unlike any other is here. We do not have seasons, we have days. We must leave the Uzuri. We must lead the pride to the western delta, where the water still remembers its course. The pride erupted in panic and disbelief. Leave the Uzuri. Their home for generations. It was unthinkable. He has lost his mind, a young lion cried. The forgetting has taken our king. But Zawadi looked at Jabari, and for the first time, she saw not a king, but a leader. He was not roaring commands, he was sharing a terrible, hard-won truth. He had learned to listen, and now he was asking them to listen to him. How do you know this, Jabari? Zawadi asked, her voice calm amidst the chaos. Because I finally stopped roaring, he said, his voice quiet but clear, carrying a new and powerful authority. And I listened to the whisper of the world. It is crying out in pain. We must go. Now. The pride fell into a stunned silence. The king who had always been so certain, was now certain of something entirely different. His conviction was no longer born of arrogance, but of a profound and terrifying connection to a reality they could not perceive. They were faced with an impossible choice: stay in their dying home and perish, or follow a humbled king into the unknown based on a whisper. The silence that met Jabari's declaration was heavier than any he had known. It was thick with fear, disbelief, and the deep, territorial instinct of a pride rooted in the Uzuri for 1,000 generations. To leave was to surrender their very identity. The Western Delta, a young lion named Shani spat, his voice cracking with outrage. That is the land of the crocodile and the hippo. It is not our land. You ask us to flee like frightened hares on the word of a spider and a feeling. Jabari did not roar back. He met Shani's furious gaze, his own eyes holding the grim certainty he had brought from the cave. I am not asking you to flee like hares. I am asking you to survive like lions. The feeling Shani dismisses is the same feeling that tells you when a storm is brewing before the clouds gather. It is the land speaking. I was deaf to it before, and Faraji paid the price. I will not be deaf to it now. He turned his gaze to the entire pride, his voice low, but carrying to every ear. The green you see is a lie the land is telling out of habit. Beneath it, the earth is thirsty. The water you drink is a memory. The forgetting is the sign of a deeper sickness. We can stay, and we will be brave, and we will be proud, and we will be forgotten, our bones bleaching in the sun alongside the memories of who we were. Or we can be wise. We can follow the whisper and live to roar another day. It was Zawadi who moved first. With great effort, the old lioness rose to her feet and walked slowly to stand beside Jabari. She did not say a word. Her presence was her decree. One by one, the mothers, thinking of their confused cubs, joined her. Then the hunters, seeing the grim truth in their king's new eyes, fell in line. Shani and a handful of others stood their ground, their pride a final, stubborn fortress. But as the main body of the pride began to move, flowing west behind Jabari, the resistance broke. To be left alone in the dying plains was a death sentence. With resentful glances, they joined the exodus. The journey was a gauntlet of suffering. The further they traveled, the more Jabari's warning proved true. The grass gave way to cracked, red earth. The air grew thick with heat and dust. Their thirst became a constant, gnawing companion. The great forgetting stalked them on the march. A lioness would suddenly stop, unable to remember why they were walking, and had to be gently guided by her companions. Jabari's leadership was no longer about command, but about encouragement, about stopping to let the weak drink first from the few muddy puddles they found, about carrying a disoriented cub on his own back. He was not a king leading subjects, he was the heart of a struggling family. After days of arduous travel, a new, wet scent touched the air. A ripple of desperate hope went through the pride. They crested a final, rocky ridge, and there it lay, the Western Delta. A vast, sprawling labyrinth of waterways, lush reeds, and life. A collective gasp, part relief, part awe, escaped them. They had made it. But their trial was not over. This was not their kingdom. As they descended cautiously to the water's edge, a massive, ancient crocodile, his hide like knotted tree bark, slid from the riverbank into the water. His name was Mamba, and his cold, reptilian eyes assessed the weary pride with calculating menace. "The sun-eaters have come to my waters," Mamba hissed, his voice a low rumble. "This is not your land of open sky. Here, the water rules. You may drink, but you may not stay. The price for passage is a tribute." Jabari stepped forward. "We seek only to survive. We have no tribute, but our gratitude." "Gratitude does not fill a belly," Mamba sneered. "I have heard the whispers on the wind. The great Jabari, who roared at the moon. You think your newfound humility is tribute enough? It is not. You will give me one of your cubs. Then, you may drink." A wave of horror and fury swept through the lions. Snarls erupted. Shani and the others looked to Jabari, their claws unsheathed, ready for the roar, ready for the fight. This was a language they understood. Jabari felt the old fire ignite in his blood. The urge to roar, to charge, to tear the arrogant reptile apart. It was the easiest, most natural response. But he looked at the desperate, thirsty faces of his pride. He saw the terrified cubs hiding behind their mothers. A fight would mean death for many. It would mean the end of their journey, their survival, their legacy. He had learned the cost of the easy, proud path. He took a breath, quieting the storm inside. He remembered the cave. He remembered listening. He did not roar. He bowed his head to the crocodile. It was a gesture so profound, so shocking, that his own pride fell silent. "Great Mamba," Jabari said, his voice resonant with a power far greater than a roar, the power of sacrifice. "You are the master of these waters. I cannot give you one of our children. They are the future. They are the reason we came here." He raised his head, his golden eyes meeting the crocodile's cold gaze. "So, I will offer myself in their place. Let my pride drink. Let them stay. Take me as your tribute." A collective gasp came from the lions. "No, Jabari." Zawadi cried. Mamba was taken aback. This was not the outcome his ancient, predatory mind had calculated. He expected defiance, not surrender. He expected a roar, not a whisper. He saw in Jabari's eyes not fear, but a king's true love for his people, a love stronger than pride, stronger than life itself. It was a power the crocodile had no jaws to grasp. The silence stretched, broken only by the lapping of the water. Finally, Mamba let out a low, guttural sound. "I have lived 10 of your lifetimes, Sun-Eater. I have seen kings of the river and the land come and go. All of them fought. All of them roared. You are the first to offer silence." He slowly backed deeper into the water. "Your tribute is accepted. But I do not want your flesh. I will take your pride. The story of the lion who bowed to the crocodile will be my tribute. It will be a tale told forever. Drink. Stay in the marshes to the north. But remember, you are here by my grace." With that, the ancient reptile submerged, leaving a ripple on the water's surface. For a moment, no one moved. Then, a single, joyous roar erupted from Shani. It was not a roar of battle, but of triumph, of relief, of a newfound, unshakable respect for the king who had traded his dignity for their lives. The entire pride joined him, their voices blending into a thunderous chorus that echoed across the delta, a sound of life reborn. That night, as the full moon, Mwezi, rose over the new land, Jabari walked alone to the water's edge. He did not need to climb a rock. He simply looked up at her serene face, and, for the first time, did not feel the need to speak. In his heart, he offered a silent gratitude. And on the wind, he felt a gentle caress, a warmth that was not from the sun, a feeling of approval and restored balance. The land was no longer forgetting. It was remembering how to hope. Jabari, the king who had lost his pride to find his true strength, finally understood. The lion's roar was not for commanding the world, but for protecting the whispers that made the world worth living in. And somewhere, high above, the moon looked down, her silence finally, perfectly understood.